Also developing, Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying today she feels, quote, no pressure to join her fellow Democrats calling for an impeachment inquiry into President Trump, but noting that if that's the route they pursue and there is sufficient evidence of criminal activity, only impeachment is a strong enough reprimand.
When does it rise above all the other stuff for you? What is that
When
trigger?
we stop finding even more information. This is, as I say, with me, this runs deep. And every day we see more. So why would we stop with our less strong case? I think censure is just a way out. If you're going to go, you got to go. In other words, if the goods are there, you must impeach.
Here now, Dan Bongino is the host of the Dan Bongino Show and Fox News contributor. Juan Williams is co-host of The Five and a Fox News political analyst. Well, I've had a chance to catch up with Juan here, Dan, but to you first, because Nancy Pelosi says politics are not at play here. This was a roundtable discussion hosted by Christian Science Monitor, and she really digs into this conversation. Politics not at play? Could that be?
Yeah, that's hilarious. Of all the ridiculous things said in Washington, D.C., Nancy Pelosi hinting that politics aren't at play in impeachment talk. Impeachment for what, Sandra? Winning an election? What did President Trump do? He was the victim of the biggest political spying scandal in U.S. history. There was no evidence of obstruction of justice that would make even a remotely convincing court case. It was absurd. So Nancy Pelosi gets that. That's why she's trying to tamp down this utterly absurd talk of impeachment.
And she suggests that they have evidence, but they just need to, Juan, gather more evidence to build a stronger case for impeachment. Well, if there is evidence, shouldn't the American people be privy to that?
There is evidence, and it's right there. I just don't think most people have read the Mueller report, but he outlines 10 specific items of obstruction of justice and says it's up to the Congress. He says, let's let the process
So just one,
proceed.
why wait? Why not pursue impeachment now?
I think because Nancy Pelosi thinks that if you simply proceed with impeachment, knowing that the Senate is majority held by Republicans, it's unlikely that the president would be convicted, and therefore the impeachment really would not remove him from office and would allow him to claim that he's a martyr to some kind of, political act. In fact, I just want to contradict what Dan said, because I think Nancy Pelosi is under pressure from Democrats who say, forget the politics as to whether or not it helps us going into 2020 or doesn't. The Congress has a responsibility under its constitutional, obligation as the first member of the government, 3 branches of government, to hold the executive accountable, and future presidents, if they see this guy's behavior, might behave even worse.
She goes even further in this roundtable discussion, Dan, and talks about her lack of trust for the Attorney General, Bill Barr.
Yeah. We will be having access to less redacted version of the Mueller report. I accepted that because I'm afraid I really don't trust the Attorney General of the United States.
That's a big statement, Dan.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure that what Juan's talking about here. And my friend Juan, who I respect greatly, but there's evidence of obstruction of justice. So, Juan, let's just be clear. You have the former FBI director who's a skilled lawyer and was a 20-plus, 30-year public servant, and he had evidence of obstruction, but because he was being a really nice guy, he didn't charge it. One, I did read the Mueller report. I actually wrote 2 books on this case. And I don't know if you realize it, but Andy McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI, was asked under oath by Senator Marco Rubio if there was any effort to obstruct the case, and he said no.
Well,
so, Juan, unless you're
Mueller...
suggesting, wait, hold on. You have some information Bob Mueller and Andy McCabe don't. No. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, no, so let me just respond quickly to say, Sandra, that what we heard from Robert Mueller in his brief press conference was that because of Justice Department policy, he did not think it was his place to indict a sitting president.
That's not what he said.
That's
not what he said, Juan. There are 3 witnesses in the Department of Justice that have him saying the exact opposite. That is a factual mistake.
The report.
That is not correct.
Okay.
All right.
No, it's not in the report. And there are witnesses saying otherwise.
But
that is
Juan,
wrong.
and the respect is mutual, by the way. Dan mentioned that. Yeah. Juan, I just want to ask you what direction you want to see your party go in here. Because now the calls are for Robert Mueller to testify. Get Robert Mueller up there in some way or another. Subpoena him if you have to. I mean, where is your party going with this next?
Well, I think there's such pressure coming from the base of the party to say, listen, do not relent. Don't give up because, you know, if you look at Barr, and this is what Nancy Pelosi was talking about, Sandra, he seemed to spin the Mueller report and lead people to think, oh, there's nothing
Those
there.
are big statements, Juan.
Yeah,
Those are big statements.
I think that's why people want. But the question is it smart, and do you do it in such a way that allows him to stay in office?
I gotta go. You have 5 seconds, Dan.
He spin the report. Juan, he quoted Mueller in his. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just making
All right,
stuff
you
up. He quoted Mueller.
All right. This conversation will continue. Thank you,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Dan.